royalty and is of great significance where it comes to feminine gender. This is likely to have sought equity in the domains of culture and gender. So Cleopatra's final days intensifies the determination of power and borrowed masculinity behaviors, where she approves to choose death to life when it is capitalized by the Roman king Caesar. No man takes the courage to end his life for Egypt, and that gently proves the masculine ideas in power that she has as a woman. Here, Shakespeare, through the cardinal representation of Cleopatra, blurs the binaries betwixt gender and sexes. The conclusion of the play suggests Shakespeare's strong ability to create and to recreate the scenes of reconfiguration of the strict parallels of patriarchy and matriarchy that can bring in ambiguity in the pursuit of life. So Cleopatra's character represents or representation is made such where they socially contradict the stereotypical implications of female gender. Cleopatra, through her character, brings in the national awakening and the senses out the demarcations of matriarchy. This representation questions the traditional conservatism and proves to contradict mere existentialism of feminine gender. Cleopatra uses a final breath to reflect on the nature of death, using dramatic irony to contrast male versus female approaches. Shakespeare undermines and comprehends the gender binary. So, this is my presentation for today's national conference and the seminar, where I have titled my paper presentation as A Phallocentric Study of Women Blundering the Binaries Betwixt Gender, where I would like to capitalize or establish Cleopatra as a very phallocentric woman, where a feminine quality is destabilized and a masculine quality is incorporated and stabilized within the concretes of female gender or femininity. So thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you, sir, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Kavipriya. It was actually a mind-blowing presentation. I wonder, though you would have prepared your PowerPoint presentation, what you have done is exactly better than that. And I would like to make a few comments on your presentation. It was truly a fabulous presentation, but only one thing that I would like to remind you is, please keep in mind when you are going to present it again, or when you are going to deal with the same topic in the future conferences or seminars, please don't mention Antony and Cleopatra as a novel. Those times of Shakespeare, we don't have any individual identity of novels. It is only play. So I hope you got it. Am I clear? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible. Thank you for the suggestions and the recommendations that you made with the changes of the presentation. I would rectify with my future conferences and seminars. Thank you for this, sir.
Thank you. Other than that, it was really a spectacular and wonderful presentation. I felt that I have been seated in a PhD Viva Watch examination. It was really a fruitful presentation. Keep doing well and wish you all the best from the Department of English Language and Literature of Arul on the college. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Next, I would like to, yes, thank you. I would like to invite Ms. Mahima. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mahima
Am
from,
I? Yeah.
yes, please hold on. I'll get your details shortly. Mahima GK, guest lecturer of All Saints College, Trivandrum. And she would be presenting her paper on Revolution in Motion, a Marxist reading of Snow PSS. Am I right, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and thank you. Keep going.
Okay, thank you, sir.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. This paper titled Revolution in Motion, a Marxist reading of Snowpiercer, explores the various elements of the movie Snowpiercer, directed by Bong Joon-ho, along the lines of Marxist theory. This study investigates the different ways in which Marxist ideologies regarding class struggle and revolution are explored in this film. Analyzing Snowpiercer in a literal way would be an incorrect approach towards the movie because so much of the movie is densely allegorical. The film as a whole openly invites readings based on various philosophies. Its particular premise is that the Earth is frozen over after a failed attempt to solve global warming, and that all of the survivors are left stranded on a globe circling train. Initially, the film's premise is presented as a kind of typical take on dystopia. It turns out that the train was designed by a maligned but gifted engineer known only as Wilford. And life on the train is a strict hierarchy with the ruler in the front next to the engine, followed by the elites in the first class. The remainder of the humanity is stuck in the back, cramped in the tail of the train. This hierarchy is fairly stated. Occasionally, guards from the front come to look for someone possessing a particular skill, or more chillingly, a few children of the proper size and height. Other than this, the people in the back do not seem to work or serve much of a purpose. They only reproduce. And this is the source of both their value to those who run the train and makes them the objects of hatred to those in the front as well. Now, the train at its center is a very clear allegory for capitalism. Both capitalism and the train were promised as the sole saviors for mankind, but eventually they became inescapable means of oppression for all but the rich and privileged. It is when the plot progresses to the point of revolution that more Marxian concepts are discussed. The film answers the question of why people are reluctant to revolt. In the film, what makes the people reluctant to the idea of staging a revolt is the ideology that, as much as the train front section of the train oppresses them, the train itself is their only means of survival. Ideology is a system of representation endowed with existence and a historical role at the heart of a given society, as told by Althusser. In addition to this, the threat posed by the armed guards also looms as over their heads. Thus, both repressive state apparatuses and ideological state apparatus together keep the tail enders from demanding change. Now, the settling, that is the train, um, in the opening titles, it is referred to as the rattling ark. It acts as a microcosm for the world, which is to say, with the whole population compressed to nothing but this particular train, it symbolizes the structure of the entire world. The people within it have been fed the ideology that the train is their world. Throughout the narrative, the film progresses from the very back, that is the tail, to the very front. The tail section is essentially a slum. The inhabitants never having any real food, just gelatinous mass called protein blocks, no access to sanitation or medication, and no hope for escape. And they are kept in these cramped, dirty, and dark quarters, and they are living off a very meager diet. Thus, almost no portion of the resources are reaching them. This area is clearly symbolic of the lower classes of the world. The film is highlighting how the current capitalist global society knows that these such places exist in the world, but do not do anything to improve them. Now, the guards, as well as anyone else who has a job working on the train, can be considered as a part of the working class, showing another part of the social order in contemporary society. Next comes the food production for the lower class people, where we get to see one man who has been taken from the slums and he is charged with making their food, and he has become insane from the repetitive task. And now this can be seen as a direct reference to the phenomenon of reification, as mentioned in Marxist theory. The cook is effectively just a machine. The repetitive task has turned him into a person who is devoid of individuality. Next comes sections for food supply for the upper class, an orchard, an aquarium, and an abattoir. This shows how the rich can afford to eat better while the poor are left with food that always leave them hungry or undernourished. Following this is a classroom where the children of the front section, the elites, are educated and they are also indoctrinated into the ideologies of the train. So the back of the train is dominated by what Althusser calls the repressive state apparatus, where the masses are kept in line with the gun, while in the middle, the school is the ideological state apparatus. The children are interpellated in the lessons, which treat the train as the condition of survival and Wilfred as its creator as their savior. Further on, the film passes through several carriages where the residents of the front live. Um, Now, it represents the middle class, including tailors and dentists, etc. And further along, there are high class restaurants, salon, pool, sauna, nightclub, etc. So, in the Marxist theory, the trick whereby people are made to feel that they are choosing when they do not have any choices is called by Althusser as interpellation. Capitalism, says Althusser, thrives on this trick. It makes them feel like free agents while actually imposing things on them. It accounts for the operation of control structures not maintained by physical force, and hence for the perpetuation of a social setup which concentrates wealth and power in the hands of the few. Now, if people cannot live outside the train or they cannot imagine a life outside of its walls, then they are forced to venerate it. In the end, conforming to the way of the life in the train is their only option. This is also an example of ideological hegemony as propounded by Gramsci. So, it is very easy to see the train as an image of contemporary capitalism. The inequality is acknowledged by nearly everyone except for the lucky few. But as long as the world outside of it appears frozen and hostile, then the train is their only option. Now, the events of the film mirror a class revolution. The inhabitants of the tail section or the of the train forced their way to the front in a similar way to poor of a contemporary nation rising against the wealthy upper class. Their purposes are also identical, with the revolution in the movie and the parallel class revolutions of contemporary society, both wanting to gain more equal distribution of wealth and resources. Furthermore, as the revolt makes its way to the upper part of the train, the residents of the front section also revolt and try to kill the would be usurpers. This symbolizes the class aggression on the part of the upper classes, as well as a conservative ideology. They do not want to be dethroned and they do not want to strive for a better system of living because they are the ones who benefit the most from the current system. Now, within capitalism, there is no certainty that any resistance hasn't been already co opted and repurposed and undermined by the system that you are trying to escape. Um, Now, the particular motive can be directly linked to the Marxist notion of alienation and reification. And it is in the towards the engine of the train, you can see children being kept in a very tiny place in the middle of a complicated machinery beneath the floor. They are stand-ins, they are replacements for machinery that has gone extinct. Now, this particular motive is closely linked to the Marxist notion of alienation and reification, whereby in the capitalist society, the workers are made to perform repetitive tasks of whose purpose they have no idea. Knowledge of. They eventually undergo reification by which they are bereft of their humanity and are thought of merely as hands. Now, the system by which the train operates is inherently unjust, regardless of who pretends to rule. There is no other way to keep the engine alive and the train system in balance than by domination and exploitation. Except that the message of this movie is that when making a revolution, when aiming for a big social change, uh, those involved in it have to be careful not to go back to their departure point, that it is useless to try and find a solution. Um, so the solution now is not to seize the train, to claim its engine, but to begin to imagine a life outside of it. The only survivors at the end of the movie are the train babies, Yona and Timmy, who emerge from the burning wreckage of the train, a clean break from the dominance of the old order and its white patriarchs. The end of Snowpiercer seems like a desolate vision. In literal terms, the children's chances of survival are almost zero. But the film is an allegory, and in those terms, the escape from the train is hopeful. Bong shows that while the revolution was instrumental in bringing about social change, the end goal is not a mere repetition of the same hierarchies with different names at the top. This displays a very close resemblance to the Marxist concept that no class can hold state power over a long period without at the same time exercising its hegemony over and in the state ideological apparatus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mahima. Actually, we felt like watching that movie. The presentation was really superb, and you took us all to the train, to different compartments of life, where injustice is almost prevailing. Life is not smooth and easy. Thank you for your beautiful presentation. I have a
Thank
general
you, sir.
question or general query about
Yes, sure, sir.
marks.
Yes, sir.
Don't take this to your presentation. It is only a general observation.
Okay, sir.
Uh, if you would like to recommend marks to any of the centuries, that marks is extremely necessary to make a change. To
Mm.
which century would you recommend it?
As in, which century really truly needs Marxist ideology? Is that
Yes,
the
yes,
question,
that's
sir?
what I wanted to ask you. Yes,
I feel that the current century itself is uh, going towards a point where capitalism is starting to collapse, and the influence of capitalism is leading to ecological issues as well, great ecological issues, almost to the point of the apocalyptic situations as mentioned in the movie. Any day now,
yes.
those things could also happen. So, before such a thing occurs, there needs to be a restructuring where industrial production and things like that are reined back, and another alternative system is put in place. So I would say that this century itself could benefit a lot from Marxian ideologies, at least some of them.
Some of them. But I would, this is my personal opinion, I would recommend Marx for all the centuries because Marx is unavoidable and indelible.
Yes, sir.
His ideologies cannot be changed or cannot be removed from one century to another century because
Yes.
he is the beginning of ideology of
Yes,
equality,
of course.
fidelity, and what we call fraternity.
Yeah.
So I am a great follower of Marx, but I don't read many of his books. But I like his ideas and ideologies. I hope that what Marx wanted to realize would really take place in the nearing or in the faraway future. So personally,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
much.
choosing Marx for your presentation and wish you all the best from the Department of English Language and Literature of Arul College, Karmato.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this opportunity.
Now the
Thank
floor is open for other delegates for your queries or your observations. If not, we will move on to the next presenter. Thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Mahima, once again. And now I would like to invite Monisha of this folder.
Sir, good afternoon. Am I
Yes,
audible,
ma'am.
sir?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, but may I know your actual name, ma'am?
Sir, I am here because Dr. Sedupati is finding some issues in connecting.
Oh,
So
you are for Mr. Dr. R. Kumar Sethupathi.
he'll be doing it, sir, but he's finding some issues with connection. So I'm just letting him know what is happening here. That is why I'm here, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
No, I
Is
think
he able
he'll
to
be
Okay.
connect,
presenting.
ma'am, now?
Yes,
Sir,
sir. I'll
yes,
join the presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
thank you,
Sir.
sir.
And I welcome once again. And over to you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Kumar Sethupathi. Please make your presentation.
Um, Shall we thank you? Good afternoon. My topic is on transgenerational transmission of trauma and slavery, a study on resistance, inversion, and resilience in Yaga's homegoing. The main focus is given to the novel Homegoing, the seminal work of the Ghanaian American writer Yagazi, who is regarded as an essential contributor to Afro American literature in the 21st century. The internalization of African American slavery is the main sole concept, how to rectify prevailing the misconceptions. Here, in this article, I would like to explore how Yagazi depicts racism in the novel, shedding light on transmission of the slavery, as well as how the author's response to the disturbing legacy of enslavement that continues to impact multiple generations. And this argument is based on Kathy Ford's trauma theory, and the narrative text from this radical perspective aims to contribute the filling gaps in African American cultural history. And the most important finding would like to underscore the importance of trauma, memory, and remembrance to foreshadow the resistance and resilience exhibited by the stereotypic hegemonic white society, and this contributes how the transmission of trauma and the preservation of accurate historical memory. Of course, this concept of trauma in the vast way of how an individual's emotional response to a tragic event that disrupts prior notions of self and the parameters through which one evaluates society. Throughout history, distressing experiences have inflicted wounds and immobilized individuals along psychological and emotional pathways. This understanding of trauma's nuances, of course, has advanced significantly in recent decades. In the point of a historical concept, the adverse effects of past trauma may persist and be transmitted to second and third generations. This has been clearly explained and claimed experience by Cathy Cole argues that the experience of trauma repeats itself exactly and unremittingly through the unknown acts of the survivor and against his very will. In present times, psychologists, sociologists, and historical analysts have extensively researched through various mediums how these traumatic experiences are played. A notable contribution to this field is the concept of post-traumatic slave syndrome coined by Dr. Joe DeGruy. And this theory enhances how the oppressed black oppressed groups globally have the condition resulting from the centuries of slavery, institutionalized racism, and how they face and what are the symptoms of the ancient trauma observed, and this personal experience of every family member, irrespective of the racial discrimination and how this lasting effect can persist as a dissonant outcome influenced by external factors. And here, the central question of the article, which encapsulates it, and is the historical transmission of collective trauma. And this aims to encapsulate how beyond collective traumas were incorporated into the lived experience of African Americans and to eliminate the outcomes of slavery as transferred trauma. Here, as the critic Jennifer Usen points out, in traumatism, reproaction is a casualty that designates the conversation of affects that are themselves generated by processes generating another section of effects. That is, the after event carries a partial knowledge and becomes a traumatic signifier in the daily live that of the subject. And this Marian Heitz's concept of post memory argues that the children of the traumatic people, when they grow up dominated by the narrators, they preceded their birth, which have their beloved stories, are evaluated by the stories of the previous generation, skipped by traumatic events that can either be understood, not recreated. What they do, they have to reconstruct the narrative, this violence beyond stories, photographs, writings, and sometimes even while discerning what inevitable silence may mean. In this particular novel, Yaga is homegoing. It traces to Ephia, who marries a slave trader, and Elsie, who is captured and enslaved two orphan sisters that follow them, spanning over 250 years. It shows that repressed trauma needs to be addressed to heal, and how the acknowledgement plays an important role, and how the trauma is to be addressed, and how they are not entirely disappear, and what happens to the later generations in the way of called daily microaggressions. And this African novels of double consciousness popularized with D. Boys was raised and held throughout the slave trade, as well as how the communities plays an important role of the trauma of slavery in the descendant communities, and the tropes such as the certain mediums through which it is conveyed from one generation to another. The mediums are in the medium, or in other words, recurrent tropes are the necklace, fire, water, which symbolically transmits across generation. And this class, of course, the nightmares or the various forms, they have a much more tune to find the existence and how this impact to the identification, storytelling, and sometimes the proverb tellers, music, all plays in profound functions in this homegoing. The characters, Efia, Kui, Badu's village, identity of a diaspora, existence, elements of memory, as much more defined in Vijay Agne's book, Diaspora, Memory and Identity, have a much more interlink with this concept of conflict and political migrant who unclaimedly experience the terror of his homeland. And in illustrating the Rothberg technicals, this may have a statement reflects that the memory of the past affects the present and upcoming generations too. And this have a major view of Marjorie and Marcus, which mentioned in the Yagas from going to the shore of Ghana, how they have an ancestral joined spiritually, communal, and through the necklace and the scene and the instances of their change and rebirth. When they finally lifted his head from the sea to cough, a particular instance from the novel, they looked at water before him at the vast expanse of time and space. Similarly, and Marcus, of all these rats, allows himself to be free from all the interactive of history that they entirely accused of it. And this cultural memory have a much more help of the fragment identity of the characters construct their self-consciousness engagement in the diaspora. And to conclude it, the Yagasi stands as a poignant and powerful explorations how through which the racism, untraveling, hegemonic whitey, and of course the overall the travels 250 years, this symbolism proxies shapes the descendant communities both physically and symbolically. And this masterful storytelling, interwoven with themes of healing, liberation, self-dominion, culminates in a narrative that not only documents the past but challenges us to critically examine whose voice, stories may have been silenced in the process. This ultimately, homegoing emerges as a literary masterpiece of the transmission of trauma through the forms of slavery, which captures the historical genre of African American, but also serves as a call to action, urging readers to question, define, and all the narratives that shape our understanding of the past. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. R. Kumar Sethupathi. You made it very clear that for almost two and a half century, it has been a problem. Trauma, slavery, resistance, and even identical issues. And hope you have prepared it very well and you did this study in a fruitful way. I would like to clarify one thing.
Yes, sir.
After reading this particular novel, I mean this is a novel from the African side, am I right?
Yes, sir.
After reading this novel, are you able to find any either temporary or permanent remedy for this social illness, just like slavery, trauma, and other things?
So rather mentioning this remedy uh, for the remedy, which can be defined, and they always long for a hope, or rather, in other words, they always hope for a betterment of their own inner self as well as the society. And this
Yes.
sense of hope and longing for the hope remains unconditionally silent, and sometimes they continue to persist their own societies, always longing for a betterment of their own selves.
So longing for a betterment of oneself, that stays forever with a person.
Yes, sir.
And if you are able to conclude it, that the change should begin from oneself. Am I
Yes,
right?
sir. Change should begin from oneself. If we are initiating a change, then our change will definitely make over our present situation, because everything written in our culture and custom in our life is written towards the progress. And it's our responsibility that how this marmot task of answering such questions will be the responsibility of our own self. And this answers the initial things.
Until or unless an individual decides to change, change is still a long-awaited goal. Am I right?
Yes, sir, exactly.
So let us hope for the great change. We'll try to make change from ourselves, and from ourselves it will reach the society too. So with this
Sorry, sir.
concluding remarks, I would like to congratulate all of you, all the presenters, and namely Ms. Kavi, Ms. Dr. Kumar, and Ms. Mahima for making this presentation a really fruitful, live, active, and a beneficial one. So after this presentation session, the link for feedback would be, or it is already sent to you. Please fill in the feedback, which would definitely help us improve ourselves to organize events like this in the future too. So once again, I wish you all the best. And if anybody is doing your doctorate, we wish you to complete it in a fruitful way, so that you would equip yourself as well as the society and the students. So wish you all the best. So with this, I would like to end the session. Is there any other deliberations would you like to make? The floor is open to you. Shall we call it a day then?
Yes.
Ms.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yes, and Ms. Mahima,
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Sethupathi.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you all. Stay tuned.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.